Hello, and welcome back to the Personal Transformation Experience with your hosts, Maureen and David Brand. Today, we're going to talk about relationship intimacy and keeping the fire burning in your 40s and beyond.
That's right.
So, we've been talking about this week, and one thing that's for sure, you cannot have intimacy and sex in a long-term committed relationship without trust, vulnerability, and effective, open, and honest communication.
It's correct. Yeah.
And what else?
I mean, you need all those things to connect. It's important that connection is critical, right? So through connection, it's about communication, and not just verbal communication, but body language, tone, how your facial expressions. I mean, communication is what? 80% body language and maybe 10%, 20% verbal communication.
Yeah, it's
right?
not always what you say.
Right.
It's the other things, your facial expression, your mouth,
That's
eyes.
where things like text messaging fall short, right?
Right.
People
Emails,
some people hate that because they can't. A lot of people communicate more by seeing somebody.
Right.
And they get a better sense of, for me too, especially because I don't know what somebody's, like I can't get a sense of somebody when I'm not talking to them face to face. So it's very hard. So that's it. It's about connection. Just like connecting, intimately, it's a good way to connect with friends and people. I mean, it's hard to connect virtually. So unless, you're on a screen and stuff, you can connect that way. But seeing somebody in person is better if you're going to have that kind of relationship.
Right. No, absolutely. So we're focused today on intimate relationships between committed partners. So let's talk about sex, which, as you shared with me, a doctor once told you that sex is the glue that holds a relationship together. I completely agree with that. But like you said,
I would say the heart. I would say that communication is the heart.
Yeah.
So, because without the heart of the relationship, you don't have the connection, and communication makes that connection.
Right.
Right. And so the glue is the intimacy and the sex. And yeah.
So one thing a lot of people debate about is how much sex people are having as they get older, let's say in their 40s and 50s and beyond. Right. And I did find this great article from AARP, which came out in September of 2023. And it talked about the frequency of sex among adults who are 40 plus. And of the adults in that group that have sex weekly, they said 30% had sex weekly, 27% monthly or less. 40% of adults surveyed 40 plus said they had no sex at all, which
40%?
40% had no sex at all.
I don't remember you telling me that yesterday.
Yes.
Holy crap, that's a lot.
Of the ones surveyed, 55% though, of the ones who have sex weekly or at least monthly, 55% had sex within the past week. But 40% not at all. I was like, what? How does that happen? That's why we're kind of talking about this today.
Yeah. So,
and then breaking it down to the age groups of adults who have sex weekly. 40 to 49, 44% of that group have sex weekly. 50 to 59, 34% have sex weekly. 60 to 69, 25%. 1 out of 4 have sex weekly. Yeah. I want to definitely be in that camp when I'm in my 60s. And the 70 plus, 16% have sex at least once a week. So, and 3 out of 5 agree that sexual activity is a critical part of a good relationship.
Right.
100%. More men than women agree. 67% of men agree with that. 57% of women agree. Of those 40 to 49, almost 3/4 agree, and just over half of age 50 and over agree. So there are people having sex, but there are a great amount of people aren't having sex at all. Now, they may not be in a committed relationship, and that may be part of it. But I suspect that even people who are in committed relationships don't have sex for a long period of time, if at all.
Yeah, and that's a problem. It breaks down the relationship, I think. But I was surprised to hear, I guess I shouldn't be surprised, but men agree that more, what was the statistic about men believe that more sex?
67% of men agree that sexual activity is a critical part of a good relationship, while only 57% of women agree with that.
Well, that's not a big disparity. I mean, 57%.
No, not at all.
Yeah,
So let's talk about breaking down the 5 C's of intimacy. These are non-negotiable items, right? Communication, compatibility, commitment, care, and compromise. Why are those important?
Well, obviously, we know communication. We just talked about that. I mean, communication is crucial. Communication sort of it lends itself to trust, being vulnerable, and having open and honest communication.
Yeah.
So I think that's really important. Like I said, it is the heart of a relationship. A good relationship is effective communication, and communication where you feel safe to talk about stuff that makes you vulnerable, right? You feel safe to initiate intimacy with your partner. You feel safe to tell them what you want. That's all. That you're kind of laying yourself bare.
Right. To be able to go to your partner and say, you know, we haven't had sex for 2 weeks. I kind of miss that, right?
Yeah.
I kind of miss cuddling with you, or I miss
I miss your touch. I want to kiss you, you know. And, you know, one of the articles I was reading, you know, instead of saying, because we tend to feel a little closed down and uncomfortable. So instead of saying, you know, I want to kiss you, some people, because they're angry and they feel frustrated, might say, how come you don't kiss me anymore?
Right.
How come you don't look at me like that anymore?
Which creates defensiveness.
That does create defensiveness. You need to, I would say, soften your approach. And it takes vulnerability and confidence in who you are. And as I was reading through this, I'm like, you know, you have to feel really confident with who you are despite your relationship with your partner. Mm-hmm. So it is kind of a lot about where you are in your head about yourself, your body, and your fear of rejection.
Right.
Right. Even if you get rejected, it's not, you have to, you know, if you feel like, oh, you know, I'm too fat, or I'm not sexy enough, or I'm not attractive, that's a lack of confidence that's going to keep you from saying how you feel. Right. So as I was reading through this, and I was just thinking about this as you were talking, when I'm looking at the 5 C's, I didn't think about this yesterday. And also yesterday, we had played this game. We'll talk about that in a minute.
Yeah, Esther
Perel, Where Do We Begin? It was really fun. That made me think about a lot about confidence, too. So if you have confidence, and that confidence is going to come with trust and feeling comfortable being vulnerable with your partner. Yeah. So it's cyclical, right?
Absolutely.
So you could be confident, but when it comes to your partner, you could feel vulnerable and afraid because if you can't trust that they're going to love you not unconditionally, I mean, all relationships, there are conditions. I mean, fidelity is one of them.
Right, and how we treat each other. Yeah.
But like if they can love you for who you are, all of who you are, and love everything about you in that way, then they're not gonna like, you know, they're not going to make you feel embarrassed or nobody makes you feel anything, but they won't say anything like.
They're not going to intentionally say things that could lead to you being embarrassed.
Right. And we have to be careful, because when we're coming to our partner from that perspective, like a fear perspective, they're going to say something and you may take it as a rejection and get so closed down that you shut down. So I think critically, one of these 5 C's, it's not here, but curiosity should be one of them. Yeah. I would say there should be a 6th C.
Well, we're going to talk about open-ended questions, right? So that's
curiosity.
Like, tell me how long you felt that way. Tell me when you started feeling that way.
Right. If you come to your partner with something that you're struggling with. Agreed. Yeah. But like curiosity, as far as like when you say, you know, I miss it when you looked at me this way, or I miss your touch, and your partner might be uncomfortable and say something offhanded because they're uncomfortable. And then instead of looking at it with curiosity and wondering where they're coming from, you take it as a rejection.
Right.
This is where I think this is the piece right there where people get stuck and lost.
Fear of rejection,
because they're not thinking about where their partner's coming from in that moment. It might have been a long time. You might have had a long time of no intimacy.
Right.
And now you're trying to build it back. So you say to your partner something like, I miss it when you kiss me like that, or I miss it when you look at me like that, or I miss your touch. Your partner might feel uncomfortable whatever they're dealing with, whatever issues they have going on, they may have something going on. Well, clearly they do if they haven't touched you in a long time.
Right.
And then they make an offhanded joke because they're uncomfortable. Right. It's like,
It spirals.
yeah, and now,
control.
so I think it's important that you look at that stuff with curiosity and ask, instead of getting angry and defensive and feel hurt, say, are you really uncomfortable with this? Ask the question. If it's on your mind, if you feel it, like just think about, but I would really approach it with curiosity. I think that's my point is what I'm trying to say.
So when we're speaking with our partner, right, we have to be clear on what is the goal, right? Are we trying to get our partner to stop doing something, to start doing something? Because when you come at it from that angle, then it's more you're asking your partner to submit to your will, basically, right? And that doesn't always end well either.
No, nobody wants to submit to anybody's will. That's not... unless you're into that stuff.
Yeah, that's a whole different ballgame, right? Are you trying to express yourself? You're trying to be heard.
Yeah.
Then when you do that, what the other person interprets is subjective, right? Because it's not about what you've said, it's what the other person has heard. So how do you help with that? That's where the open-ended questions come in. So tell me what you heard. Just stop and pause when you're talking, right? Sometimes people have a tendency to just talk and talk and talk and talk.
Yeah,
and talk without
also
a timeout,
nervous, yeah.
Right? Nervousness, anxiety, being uncomfortable, right? Can lead to that. Or backing, just stepping away for a moment and say, how do you feel about what I just said? What are you thinking about what I just said? What are your thoughts about what I just said? What do you see as the next steps here, right? So kind of, again, going back to what you said about curiosity, I think taking a step back and asking your partner to actively engage in the communication,
right,
to build connection, right? Because if you're just talking at your partner,
right,
and I need you to hear what I've said, I need to tell you what I've said.
Yeah, anytime you start a sentence with "I need," you have to be careful where you go from there.
You need to listen to me.
Right.
You need to hear what I'm saying. We haven't had sex for a month, right? It almost makes it sound like it's your fault, right?
Well, that's fault. What happens.
I want to have sex. Obviously, you don't,
you
right?
need, yeah.
Those are things that are not going to end well, right?
No.
Drive a further
you
wedge.
can't make that kind of a demand because the person's not going to hear that you miss being with them. They're going to hear that you're yelling at them and admonishing them
for what's going on, right?
Yeah.
It's not my fault. I want to have sex. Obviously, you don't.
You
right?
don't, right?
That's the message, right? So instead of trying to build connection
or make excuses, well, I work all the time. Yeah, I mean, yeah.
So that's the other thing here. What is your goal? Are you trying to justify your own negative feelings,
right?
Or more appropriately, are you trying to feel connected, right? And that's where you're going to ask different questions. And if you think you're going to have sex without having a connection and openly communicating, I mean, that there may be people that can do. I can't do that.
No, I can't do it. Yeah.
I can't have sex with you.
No.
I mean, you're the only person. I didn't want to make it imply that sound a little awkward.
You go out trying to connect with other women? Is that what you're saying?
Sounded a little awkward there.
No, yeah, I understand what you're saying now.
We're not, our goal isn't submission in a relationship. We want cooperation, right? So that means we have to value what the other person is thinking and feeling. And I love what you told me the other day about changing the emotional state. And I know you got a lot of this from a Psychology Today article, which will obviously put all the correct links out.
Yeah, it was really good.
But you have to change your emotional state. And we heard this in a podcast. I think we were just watching with Jefferson Fisher and somebody else, that emotional state drives your tone
Chris
of voice.
Ross.
Right. So your partner or whoever, when you're speaking, if you're in an angry or judgmental state, right, that's going to come out in your tone. Right.
It's going to come out in your tone. I mean, even if you say, he made an interesting point, if you're having a conversation with your partner and you're thinking to yourself, what a fucking stupid idiot, right? Like, this man is just like a complete moron right now. Don't think for 1 minute they don't pick up on that. Like, they know, even if and then you try to use like conversational techniques with them, like, that's disingenuous and sounds manipulating.
Absolutely.
And your partner's going to pick up on that. They may not be able to pinpoint exactly what you're doing and what it is that's turning them off. But if you're approaching them in your head and you're thinking, this man is a stupid idiot right now, I'm gonna try this, oppositional technique or whatever. I think Chris Ross was talking about.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, those are, because I know with kids too,
it doesn't work.
What, Dad? You don't normally talk
like
way,
that, right? So they know. I mean, people
Right.
pick it up. It's disingenuous and it sounds manipulating. So be authentic and be genuine with your partner. I mean, you have to be nothing but honest and a little bit vulnerable, because
Right.
this is the love of your life, right? This is somebody you care about. You're having an intimate relationship with. So that vulnerability is important to be there, because then they feel safe. If they know that, oh my God, because it takes a lot of courage.
It does.
But-
Especially if you were raised, like, say, in a household where you were never allowed to talk about sex.
Oh, yeah.
Your parents didn't show any intimacy
Which
around
is what
you.
it was like when I grew up.
Right?
Yeah,
You
no,
know,
they didn't.
your mother appeared frigid, and so you could never imagine your parents having sex, right? Then that
Yeah.
it makes it harder for you to be vulnerable in a committed sexual
It really
relationship.
does. But the minute you show up vulnerable and honest and genuine, where your state is in the emotionally
Right.
right place, that person's going to feel safe in turn
Right.
to give that back to you. So Esther Perel says, if you want to change the way someone responds to you, you need to change the way you respond
Yes,
to them.
absolutely.
So it starts with you. And if you want them to respond differently to you, then you have to respond differently to them.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And while we're on the topic of Esther Perel,
Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit about
It's a good
these
segue.
exercises that I found in one of her newsletters.
Oh.
And she has said intimacy is not solely about sex. So we don't want to give anybody the idea listening or watching us today that if we're talking about intimacy, that we're only talking about sex, right?
Right.
Because communication can be intimate as well. And really, intimacy, according to Esther Perel, and I agree with this, I think others have said it too, it's about connecting emotionally
Right.
and physically. That's why, how do you feel about
You don't
what's
even
going
need
on?
words.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah, a hug.
before you
right?
even read that, what
Right.
first thing that comes into my mind is, if you're struggling with verbal communication with your partner, do an exercise
Yeah.
where you don't speak.
Right.
And
I like
just
it.
show each other how you feel, because you'll probably get further that way, and then you'll be able to open up. Because once you open up physically,
Yeah.
and you can show them affection, and we're not talking about sex. I mean, it may lead to sex, great. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But you need to kind of know where you are and be able to show that affection. Like, I can walk up to you and hug you and kiss you, and
Right.
you respond. I mean, it's not like I have any
Open heart, open arms.
open
yeah.
arms, right? I have no inhibitions about that. I
Right.
mean,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Right. And we were affectionate in public too. I know your child sometimes goes, ooh. But,
I know.
but
but I'm affectionate with. Look at Finn.
Yeah.
I mean, Finn is as affectionate with me. I mean,
But I think there's
Yeah.
a validity to modeling in front of your children and
Yes.
other family members, right?
Yes.
This is healthy. Even sometimes we talked, I think, in a prior episode about fighting, right? Arguing, debating. I mean, that's healthy too. We're connecting, right? Even if we're arguing about something.
connecting, right.
You're connecting, right? And if you're hugging, you're connecting, right? If you're just asking, like I call you on the way home, how was your day? Tell me
Right.
how your day was today,
Right, right.
I want to know. And
Yeah.
you tell me, right? So all those things are important. And that's the meaningful conversation part too, right? That deepens that relationship,
yeah,
right? And if you ask somebody, like we know that, oh, how are you feeling? Great. All right, man, talk to you later, right? I mean, that's superficial, right?
Yeah,
And so you really
yeah.
have to be willing to listen to your partner and sit down. Don't pick up the phone. Don't be looking at your phone while your partner's talking.
Right.
Right. Or watching the TV. If your partner really wants to talk to you,
Turn the TV off,
shut everything
face
off,
them.
put the phone
Right.
down and look at them.
Right.
Look at each other.
right. Turn around and face each other.
That's
and
the
really,
other dilemma we have right now. Is everybody's looking at their phones while they're trying to talk, right?
Right.
And
You
how do
need
have
100%.
You cannot have a meaningful connection that way.
No,
Yeah.
no.
So some of the things that Esther Perel talked about around desire, I love this example of a couple sitting down watching a television program where there's some intimacy, sexual intimacy, maybe
Right.
sexual charge moment happening between the characters, and encouraging one partner to say to the other, did you see the way that they looked at each other? I would love to have that look with you, right? Or I miss your touch. I want to come over there and kiss you right now, right? Those are all great things, right, that build connection. Not, I can't believe it's been like 3 weeks since we had sex, right? That is not going to build connection and and allow vulnerability. The vulnerability needs to happen.
But I want everybody to really think about the difference between actually just going over to your partner and kissing them,
Yeah.
like while you're watching a show,
Yep.
and saying, I really want to come over there and kiss you. You're not asking them.
Right.
You're telling them what you want to do.
Right.
And when you say that, I think, as opposed to just going over and kissing them, especially if there's been some friction in the relationship, when you say that, they kind of look at you and they're like, well, yeah, I want that too.
Right.
Instead of just going over and assuming, like, just doing it. There's a difference between those two things. And if you, hopefully you could see that, imagine it happening. Imagine you're watching a show,
Right.
you've had a little friction, you just kind of crawl over. He might be like, what are you doing? Or she might be like,
Right.
what are you
Absolutely.
doing? I'm trying to watch a movie. Right. Instead, pause it and say, no, I really want to come over there and kiss you right now. And
pausing is even better, right?
Yeah,
because
pause
maybe the
the
partner's
movie.
like roasting the show.
Pause the movie, get his attention or her attention, and say that. And I get that's way sexier to me, because now you're like anticipating it, and your partner just told you what they want, and that's like a turn on, and it sounds confident.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah,
we'll have to try that. So let's talk about Esther Perel's exercises here that she shared in her newsletter. I love the affirmation exchange.
Yeah.
Right. These are all exercises that help build connection. Take turns sharing 2 things you love about your intimate life using I statements. Like, I love when we kiss goodnight, or I love when we lay naked together. Right.
Yeah.
They don't have to necessarily be sexual. I think I just made it sexual, but I love when we take walks together, right? At night. I do, actually, right?
Yeah,
that's a great time of connection.
Yeah, I love that time.
Mm-hmm. Speak from longing. The exercise here is to foster understanding, create motivation.
Right.
Take turns asking and answering questions such as, what is the greatest sexual memory you have of us? This kind of sounds like the card game that we were playing last night. What do you miss about our sex life?
Right.
So again, you have to be fairly vulnerable to ask these questions. And then finally, she suggests an exercise around curiosity questions to explore other aspects of eroticism. Mm-hmm. Take turns asking each other about your favorite sensory experiences. What temperature of water do you like? Where is a spot in your body that you feel could use a massage? What is your favorite food to eat slowly and savor? But again, we finally got to the card game last night.
It was a lot of fun, yeah.
What motivated you to buy those cards?
So I was really curious, and because I love when we talk about stuff, and I remember what really motivated me to do it was when one of our first podcasts was me interviewing you. And I loved being able to ask you questions that you weren't prepared for.
Yeah.
So I could see your answer, because I love, like, one of the ones where one of the questions last night was, what is your superpower when it comes to intimacy? And I said, during the question, I said, your mind.
Right.
So to me, that's one of the biggest turn-ons. I mean, there are others. I'm not going to get into them because they're private, but there are others. But I think it was your mind, and also and I was thinking earlier this morning, your capacity to love.
Yeah.
So your capacity to the way you love me.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, but your capacity to show and love, I think, is also a superpower. So, but when I was thinking about getting those things, I was like, this is going to be fun, because there are questions maybe I'll never think of.
Yeah.
And so that's what motivated me, because I love to hear what is going on in your mind.
There's a question there that we've never asked each other, and I'm thinking, wow, we don't know what we're going to get here.
Yeah.
But it was a bit of a turn on, so I love that.
It was, and it was a lot of fun, because it was stuff that, and I realized after answering those questions, I mean, some of them were, if I was a different person, I would be embarrassed,
Right.
I mean, I say things to you, I might get embarrassed, but I don't feel embarrassed, because I think you're looking at me differently.
Right.
I just feel like, I don't know.
Yeah, and it was important for me to say, because there were some things you were sharing as we were talking last night earlier that you felt, I could tell you felt mildly embarrassed. And I said, but, I just want to assure you, I'm not, this is a no judgment zone. I am not judging you for what you're thinking or what you're feeling. Those are yours, right? I mean, as long as, like, when it comes to sexuality, right? As long as you're not harming somebody or doing something against somebody's will, obviously, that's probably that is definitely a line crossed. But.
You were really surprised about something I said. I revealed about my thoughts, and you were like, "I can't believe you do that." I can't believe that. And I was like, because you said it so many times, I was like, oh my God, I feel like, what am I, a freak about this now?
Yeah, maybe that was kind of my bad. But the fire starter for that conversation was this last thing we're going to talk about today is this thing you found from the BBC about 11 years ago. How often do men really think about sex?
Yeah.
And the average man in that study had 19 thoughts about sex a day. And the study said women had 10 thoughts a day. That's where you said, well, I have more thoughts than that.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And you were like, what? And I'm like, well, 10 thoughts a day. That's like not a lot.
But the men also had more thoughts than women about food and sleep, thinking that men are more prone to impulses and maybe overthinking, perhaps, right?
Yeah.
So that was kind of interesting. So given the fact that there may be times throughout the day where we think about sex, how do we capitalize? That was my question for you. Okay, if we're not physically with each other, I don't know, 70% of the week, how do we capitalize on that and keep things going even when we're not together? And some of the things that you came up with, sexy text messages, sexy notes, sexy cards, sexy pictures, right? So
right. When we first met, we did this a lot. Like we would leave each other little cute notes and messages. You know,
and how do you keep that?
Like voicemails.
We're going on 16 years together, right? But one of the things we still do, right? On the 21st, we met on the 21st. We got married on the 21st. So we always say happy month anniversary to each other. Right. In text or in person, depending if I leave before you've woken up. Right. And then we always remember that we had our very first kiss on the 1st of September. And so on the first of every month,
kiss anniversary.
We say happy first kiss anniversary. And we have, maybe we missed once in 16 years doing that, right? So it's been very important for us to keep those things alive, where I think some people might let those things go. But even the fact that last night we were able to just talk about some experiences we had 15 years ago, kind of from a nostalgic point of view. And, it is good, remember, because a lot of people have that highly charged sexuality early on in the relationship. And then as the relationship evolves and there's kids and other issues, things fall off. And how do you keep that alive? But I mean, I think you have to keep talking. You have to keep sharing. You have to stay open.
Yeah, and you can't let things go too long. I mean, because the longer you let it go, the harder it is to kind of get back on the horse, so to speak.
Yep. No, yeah.
I mean,
but yes.
Yeah. I don't know. Anyway, that's that's what I would say.
So, this is a topic hopefully is on a lot of people's minds. I mean, our wish is that a couple who might have been together for a long time, whether you're in your 40s or 50s or older or younger, and if you're not having the intimacy and the sexual intimacy that you desire in your relationship, hopefully you can use some of what we've said or the resources we've shared to kind of rekindle that or get that, keep. I hate to say rekindle the fire because the fire shouldn't go out, right? That's why we said keep the fire burning.
Keep the fire burning.
Maintain
but the thing
is,
the reality is, the truth of it is it does go out for some people, even newlyweds, even people that are newly married. Yeah. Those two, you get married, you're so excited, and then you realize reality sets in and life is hard and
some of it's expectation
you're on
too.
Different schedules and stuff. Yeah.
Right. If you think, oh God, our sex life should be here, right, that can set you up for feeling like some kind of way about your partner, right? Like, my goal, we should be having sex 3 times a week, right?
Yeah. But I was going to say, like, I think if you don't have that communication, like in the beginning, we made an assumption that you can talk to each other. But if you really are struggling with any kind of communication other than, talking about the kids, talking about work, talking about what you need for the house, other than that stuff, Esther Perel's game, Where Do We Begin?
I love it.
Is fantastic.
Thank you, Esther.
It's really, really a great game, and you can start there. That's where you begin. Yeah. Because if you really are struggling, you have now someplace, like a game, like this card game where it's a storytelling game, and ideally you're supposed to tell a story about.
Yeah, absolutely.
I didn't actually tell stories. I mean, I kind of had it in my head. Like when I answered a question, I remembered a specific event. Yep. But yeah, I think that you have to begin somewhere. So doing that makes it so much easier. This way you don't have to like kind of think about it. Or you could just interview your partner.
Yeah.
Right? Sit down one day
Oh, we did
and
that in the second podcast.
write a bunch
too.
of questions that you really want to know and say, you know, I'm going to interview you.
Yeah.
And like,
Well, actually,
Yeah.
I think it was our third podcast. So you
Yeah.
go back to late September, early October.
it is a lot of fun, and you can
we
ask
demonstrated interviewing your partner.
whatever you want, and you don't want to
Yeah.
set your partner up to squirm or
No,
anything, but
absolutely not.
you want to ask questions that you really would never typically ask, or talk about things you wouldn't
Right.
normally ask throughout a normal day.
Right, absolutely.
So I'm sure there's lots of questions that people want to ask their partners that they never really do,
Yeah,
and that's the opportunity to do it.
I get it. All right, I love it. Thank you. Thank you. I love you. So thank you out here watching us. And if you like this episode, please like and subscribe. And if you have any comments, please leave them in the comment section. You can email us directly if you want to have a private conversation at changingtheworldwithinus@gmail.com, or visit our Instagram page at Personal Transformation EXP. And we look forward to seeing you again. Hope you have a great week and hope you find this helpful. And best of luck on your personal transformation journey. Thank you.